Hello and welcome to this webinar about teaching Sikhism. This is a webinar that was recorded as a lecture, and so you will hear other people's voices throughout it. These were my students as I recorded the audio that went along with this webinar. I hope you enjoy it, and if you have any questions that go along with it, please do not hesitate to contact me at drjamesdholt@gmail.com or have a look at my website at www.jamesdholt.com. Now, it's mainly going to be subject knowledge, so hopefully you'll be aware of most things that we're going to talk through. It's been a bit weird actually, because you know how I say to you there has to be a flow to the individual lesson and then a flow to the lessons as a whole. I've been very conscious that when I was planning this, trying to work out how to order it, so for me it made logical sense and it kind of fed one into the other. So it's not just kind of me asking you to do that, it's also looking at how we can possibly frame it and how I can possibly sequence it. But there's going to be lots of different ways that we sequence that. So Sikhism is odd, not in because of the thing that Sean had said, really, because it's so young. And so it's like 15th, 16th century, not 16th, 17th, which I said, but 15th, 16th century. It's really young and is often overlooked in discussions of religion. So I use the example of Stephen Prothero in the second paragraph here. And he wrote a book, God Is Not One, and he explored what he described as 8 major world religions. And Sikhism wasn't included. So it's an interesting. Confucianism was, and a couple of other things were. And then Rodney Stark, who's a sociologist of religion, and I came across this because I was doing some research for my own stuff to do with my church. But he used the phrase that today Mormons stand on the threshold of becoming the first major faith to appear on earth since the Prophet Muhammad. And that's really problematic because obviously Prophet Muhammad was 6th, 7th century. And then it's like nothing else developed within the next 1300 years. And when there's Sikhism, which is a religion of millions around the world, then I think it's problematic. Okay, has anyone heard Sikhism called Sikhi instead of Sikhism? Don't forget you're muted.
I have.
I
don't know.
personally haven't.
Okay, Nick, you have. Where have you heard that discussion?
I'm not quite sure. I think I might have read something about it a while ago, but I can't remember what the meaning behind it being Sikhi was.
Okay. It's an issue to do with, it's kind of when we talk about Rastafari, and it's rejected Rastafarianism or Rastafarianism as a phrase because it seemed to be a colonial imposition to try to systematize religions into almost a Christian framework. And so some people see Sikhism as this, as a creation of the colonial system, and Sikhi is a better phrase. So an ism is a colonial imposition, and Sikhi is perhaps what people would refer to themselves when they're talking about Sikhism as a whole. Now, it is a debate that's out there, and I think it's important that we are aware of it, and there are some people who do call it Sikhi. However, Sikhs themselves, so you will be aware that when we went to the Gurdwara feels like a year ago now, but it was probably February, but anyway, he described it as Sikhism as well. So there's a difference between the two, but I think sometimes it's just a problem that some people raise, but it is an interesting one for us to explore because it is about that colonial aspect that they would see. The other interesting thing with regards to Sikhism, and that's the phrase that I'll continue to use through this session, is there is a push to have Sikhism identified or seek to be identified as an ethnicity on the 2021 census. So, as well as a religion. Okay, thoughts? Anyone have any thoughts on that at this point? Is Sikhism an ethnicity? And by the way, the push is coming from within Sikhism. Why would they want to do that, do you think?
Does it relate to like the whole initiation process? So you get some Sikhs who are born into a Sikh family, grow up with a Sikh background, but they don't necessarily initiate and go through the Amrit process. So much like how you have a Muslim who may not necessarily be a practicing Muslim, or a Jew who is a secular Jew rather than a religious Jew.
Yeah. So actually, if we use the Jewish example, Scarlett, in the Second World War, the Holocaust or the Shoah, Judaism or a Jew was not defined by their religion, but as a race. So Jehovah's Witnesses were able to escape the Holocaust by denying their faith and saying, I don't believe this anymore. Jews were not allowed that because they were seen to be a racial category rather than an ethnic category as opposed to a religion. So it is interesting. And there is a whole range of debate within Sikhism as to whether it should be seen as an ethnicity or whether it should be seen as a religion. And it's interesting because I went to a Sikh meeting probably about a year or so ago, and the majority of the people in the room were ethnic Punjabi, so they had the descendancy from Punjabi Sikhs. But there were a couple of European or white Sikhs within there. So it's interesting to kind of debate whether they would be seen to be ethnic Sikhs or not. Because at the moment they have to identify those who come from the Punjab as Indian. And so maybe there's an issue with regards to that, not feeling as though they're Indian, but feeling as though they're Punjabi or Sikh. So it's just an interesting diversion as to who and what Sikhism is. Okay, so I don't know if has anyone come across the Rahit Maryada? Either you've forgotten to mute it or it's stunned silence, and that's a no. Okay, the Rahit was developed in the 20th century, and what it is it's a code of conduct that's been put together and says, okay, this is what Sikhs do, this is who they are, and these are kind of rules for conduct. If you Google Rahit Maryada, it can be spelled either way of with an I in Rahit or an E in Rahit instead. But Rahit Maryada, you can Google it, and it's a document that's very downloadable and easily found. And so it's tried to kind of systematize and try to define and regulate Sikhism across the different Gurdwaras and across the different countries. So the belief is in one God, I can't even speak, the 10 Gurus, the Guru Granth Sahib, and the words of the 10 Gurus. And we'll come on to where we find the words of the 10 Gurus later. And so also they have faith in Amrit, the initiation ceremony, the Khalsa, and does not follow any other religion. Now, this raises a slight issue because, as Scarlett mentioned a moment ago, there are people who choose not to be initiated into the Khalsa. And so there is a limited amount of diversity within Sikhism, but it is a religion that tries to present itself very much, and Sikhs try to present themselves as very unified. But the diversity is sometimes within who has authority to say things, sometimes it's to do with an interpretation of the Rahit, and sometimes it's a rejection of the Rahit as well. So it's about exploring those different types of things. So Sikhism, I think of all the religions that we look at, the six that we look at, is potentially the most unified, but there is still diversity within it. It was interesting. The first time I went to a Gurdwara, I went to one in Southall, and I was sat there having a chat with some people, and I said, "Oh, we're going to go across the road to another Gurdwara," and my colleague got very cross with me because she said, "We don't tell them that we're going across there because they'll get cross because they don't see them as proper." And it's like, well, there's no difference, but it was to do with whereabouts they'd originated from within the Punjab. So there is diversity, but there's just not as much diversity as within other religions. Oh, let's go back. What does the word guru mean?
Leader? No, that's a
Religious teacher?
Religious teacher. Okay, fab. So that's how people normally define it, and how we define it within the West particularly. So Sikh is a word that means disciple or follower. And so, yes, guru is normally translated as someone who is a leader or someone who is a teacher more effectively. So teacher is the normal one. However, within Sikhism, it means something a little bit more. It comes from two Punjabi words, gur, which means darkness, and ru, that means light or shatter. So in essence, a guru is someone who takes someone else from darkness to light, or someone who shatters darkness. So it's a lot more. So I am a teacher, yes, but I am not a guru. Okay, because a guru is someone who takes someone on a spiritual journey from the darkness that they're facing or that they experience in their lives to spiritual light. And so that's why the idea of guru is really important within Sikhism. It is a little bit more than teacher. Now, you're not wrong to define it and to translate it as teacher. It's just, I think by the time we're in year 7, year 8, year 9, we can look at the etymology of a word and kind of say, well, gur and ru, and what those two things mean together. We do it with theists, we do it with atheists, so there's no reason we can't do it with guru. And it just teaches a little bit more and helps us understand how the gurus are viewed within Sikhism. Okay. So, Waheguru. Waheguru means the eternal teacher, the eternal, or probably eternal is the best phrase. So this is another phrase for God. Okay, it's not wrong to talk about God within Sikhism, but there is another phrase as well which also means God, and that is Waheguru. And this goes back to the monotheism that I think Adam mentioned earlier. So this is the Mool Mantar. Sometimes you'll see it as the Mool Mantra, but it's the Mool Mantar. And this is the first verse or the first part of the Guru Granth Sahib. So this was revealed to Guru Nanak. If you look on the right hand side of the screen, you will see a symbol. Does anyone know what that symbol is?
The Ikonkar, something like that?
Yeah, it is, exactly. It's the Ikonkar. Thanks for that, Scholar. Does anyone know what Ikonkar means?
I don't know. I can't remember what it means.
Okay.
But I can't remember what verse. It's part of one of their affirmations, and it's this whole idea that it represents God and they should be mindful of the oneness of God.
Yes, because it's the first words or the first characters of the Guru Granth Sahib, and so it's the first characters of the Mool Mantar. So I think it may mean one God, or it's just essentially the first line, which is there is only one God. And so Ikonkar is a symbol that you will see within Sikhism as well. And if you remember when we went to the Gurdwara, there was the stand with the Guru Granth Sahib, and then around the front there were flowers and different things, but there will have also been Ikonkar symbols as well, because that is as much a symbol of Sikhism as the Khanda is, which you'll also see in the orange flag and everything else. So that will be a symbol that is possible to be used. And if I'm honest, it's easier to draw, so let's go with it. Okay, so this is the definition of God. Okay, this is the one that is always used when Sikhs explore who God is and what it is. Now, one of the problems is when we picture God, if you like, we picture, or maybe it's just me that does this, we picture God from a Western classical theistic background. And Sikhs, although they say there is one God and that's all there is, it is almost a bridge between a Muslim view of God and a Hindu view of God. Now, one of the most offensive things that a person can say about Sikhism is that it's a mixture of Hinduism and Islam. But if you look at the message that Nanak delivered and the things that he talked about, there are Muslim themes, there are Hindu themes, there are things that kind of reject both religions as well. And so it's important to look at the rise of Sikhism within the context of 15th, 16th century India, which was Islam and Hinduism. But there are things that you can kind of draw comparisons with. But Sikhs themselves would see Sikhism as a revelation, as something that is not drawing on what's already there, but it was a revelation that was given to Nanak. So it is interesting, and we will look at some other aspects of Hinduism and Sikhism and Islam that kind of seem to have a relationship to some aspects of Hinduism as well. Sorry, truth is his name, creator, without fear, without hate, timeless and without form. Excuse me, beyond birth and death, the enlightened one, he can be known by the Guru's grace. So there are 10 gurus, 10 living gurus, 10 human gurus. Let's go with 10 human gurus instead. And each of them have taught about God in some way. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but these are just some example teachings of each of the gurus. There's no prize. Anyone know why Guru Hari Krishna has a blank?
Is it because I don't know? He's more Hindu than Sikh?
You're thinking of Hari Krishna, Nick.
Is it two different things?
Yep. Hari Krishna is an aspect of Hinduism. It's a school of Hinduism that focuses very much on Krishna himself. Hari Krishan, which we have to be very careful in how we say it, is a Sikh guru, but he was a child who was only guru for a very, very short time. So that's why there's nothing from him. But good guess. So yes, you can, Adam, indeed.
Why is he on the list at all if he didn't do anything?
I think, let me just double check. I think he did do something. He just didn't really write anything. So when he became guru, I think there was an outbreak of smallpox. And he took it upon himself to go and comfort those who were struggling, who were ill, and offer support to them. And when you consider that one of the one of the most important aspects of Sikhism is service or seva, then he's a really good example of that, because he then contracted smallpox, I think it was, and died. So although he didn't teach anything particularly in words, he taught lots through his actions. And also because each guru, apart from Guru Nanak, was appointed or nominated by the one before. So before he died, Guru Nanak had a friend, a companion, I think he was called Leena, and Nanak appointed him to be the guru after he died. He then changed his name to Angad, which means limb, so it's like the limb of Nanak. But each of the others nominated. So Hari Rai nominated, I think it was his son or his grandson, I can't remember which was Hari Krishna, as the following guru. And then Krishna nominated the next one. So it would have been impossible to leave him out, first of all, because of his example, but second of all, because he was chosen by the previous gurus. Is that okay, Adam?
That makes sense, yeah, thank you.
Okay, fab. The other thing is as well, just for your information, there's not many of these around, but there are certain points, just as within Islam, within Shia Islam, when we look at the issues of succession and that there were splinter groups at different points, there are people who stopped following certain of these gurus and went to other gurus as well. So it's that there is a little bit of diversity in there, but most of those have died out, the different traditions that came for that. Okay, I will put this PowerPoint on Moodle. I'll try and put it into files here as well, so you can have that. So the purpose of life within Sikhism, or the thing that people are aiming for, is to become Gurmukh. Gurmukh means godlike, or unite with God. Uniting with God. So that's the purpose of life for Sikhs, is to unite with God, or to become Gurmukh is the same. Achieving mukti, which is liberation from the cycle of reincarnation. So Sikhs do believe in a soul, and as it says here, the purpose of this life for Sikhs is to become aware of their relationship to God and seek union with him. In order to do this, a person needs to become aware of the illusion, Maya, through which they see the world. The world is real. It's not an illusion, but their perception of it is skewed by the 5 thieves, which we'll talk about in a minute. And so how Maya, which it mentions there, is about the manmuk. So they're deceived because they give in to the 5 thieves. So they have to try to become united with God. So they try to live as nice a life as possible. And so there's 3 stages of duty, and you can see these in this quote from a Sikh writer. I can't say that now. Mansukhani. There we go. So there's Dharamkand, which is a bit like karma, but those who carry out their duties sincerely and honestly will kind of develop that. The Saramkand, which your mind and understanding are purified, and Karamkand, where you find divine grace. So there's other things within each of those as well, but it's about overcoming the physical urges of the self and seeking union with God. And so that's what they're constantly striving to do, is put off their own selfish desires and do the things that God would want them to do to seek union with him. Okay, that was very kind of quick. So questions about that? We'll talk about the 5 thieves in a moment. You will have come across Maya, perhaps within Buddhism and within Hinduism, which means illusion in exactly the same way. So there is, again, relationships with some of the Indian or Eastern religions. Sorry, somebody's unmuting themselves. What was your question?
Is like seeking union?
Yeah.
Is that like the, like they work towards that union through like service, morality, and meditation, but then that's also the purpose of it. Do you know, like, so it's like the aim is to do those things to seek union, but to do that you do the things anyway. Does that make sense as a question?
Yes, I think so. So the answer is yes. And I think more so than within Hinduism, where moksha is only attainable after life. So freedom from the cycle is only available after life. Union with God is available within this life as well. So it's not just something that you're looking forward to because you do those things. It's something you experience in your day-to-day life because you're living in union with God every day. So it's not about the promise of a future reward, though that's there. It's about becoming Gurmukh today or tomorrow, not necessarily after life, because that will naturally take care of itself.
So is it like not uncommon that you'd meet a Sikh and they'd say, I have experienced like union with God, or would
I've never met a Sikh that says that. So either I know lots of dodgy Sikhs, or part of union with God is a humility in that relationship as well. So they would always see themselves as not quite there and not quite in the union that they want to be. So they would always be trying to better themselves and become more united with God, I think. So while they may feel as though they have experienced elements of union with God, I think they would constantly be trying to just do a little bit better and feel more of that unity with God as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions at all?
This is probably a stupid question.
No such thing as a stupid question, Shannon.
You know, it says at the start, within Sikhism, humanity has a soul, which is a part of God.
Yeah.
Does that mean each individual person has a soul? And
Yes,
then therefore part of God is automatically like within that person?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's not a stupid question. I think that's the way I phrased it. What that should say is within Sikhism, each human has a soul, which is part of God.
Okay, so they already kind of have a part of God in them, basically.
Yeah, but the problem of Maya, or the problem of the world, is that humans don't realize that fact. It's kind of hidden because of the reality of the world. It's a bit like the Matrix, and the truth is hidden from them, and they have to discover the truth. Now, within the Matrix, they take the red or the blue pill. Within Sikhism, it's about it's about realizing God within yourself. There's no pills to be taken. It's just you become aware of God in your everyday life, and you kind of see through the illusion that's around you. Okay, so there's two beliefs that underpin practice, though they are practices in and of themselves. So these two are completely key, and this is how, in some ways, a Sikh lives every aspect of their lives. So there's Nam Simran, which is meditation on the name of God. So I'm going to play you an aspect of this. So this is where a Sikh will repeat the name of God and also things about him in their meditations. Now, this whole thing is an hour long, so we're not going to listen to all of this.
Vaheguru, 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 Tan Vaheguru, 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 Tan Vaheguru, 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 Tan Vaheguru, Vaheguru, Vaheguru.
But that's essentially just remembering his name and meditation on the name of God. Okay, can anyone think of anything in any other religion where you may have seen that? I don't think this is a direct taking from that, by the way, but it does remind me of something. Again, this is called Guess What's in My Head.
Is it the Islam call to prayer?
Not the Islam call to prayer. Well, though that could be. I was thinking more of the dhikr, which is dhikr, and I struggle to say because I don't know if I'm swearing or not. Dhikr, which is the remembrance. It's a Sufi practice, and so they will constantly say the name of Allah as well within that context. But a Sikh will recite this in the morning. They'll recite it at various different points. So the meditation on the name of God is kind of key for those things. And then there's seva, which is selfless service, which I kind of mentioned. Just again, a problem of transliteration. Sometimes the A that's in the middle of Simran will be missing. Sometimes there'll only be one A in the first Nam. And sometimes you'll see seva with a V as opposed to a W. So those are exactly the same things. You just need to be aware that kind of those exist. Any questions about any of that lot?
Do they have to do it like a certain amount of times a day, or is it just whenever, or for how long, or doesn't it matter?
There are a series of prayers or a series of angs from the Guru Granth Sahib that people will read before they go to bed and also in the morning. But and the recitation or the remembrance or the meditation on the name of God will be a part of those as well. But there isn't a set amount that they need to be doing. But it might be, I don't know, while there may be set times where a person will kind of think, okay, I will do this. For example, if you sat bored in a lecture, you might sit and recite the name of God within that as well, if you've got nothing else to think about. So it will vary from Sikh to Sikh. Some Sikhs will do it every day, some Sikhs won't. There's all kinds of different things that kind of go along with it. So, but it's not prescribed. But I guess the idea is if you're trying to seek union with God, having him on your mind and meditating on his name will actually give you a focus and help you become closer to him, is the idea within this practice. Right, we'll look at seva now. There we go. 3 types of seva: Tan, Man, and Dan. Okay, so if you can remember your rhyming, you'll be all right. So there's physical service, There's mental service and there's material service. This is stolen directly, so you're aware, from BBC Bite Size. So it's just, we will often see the focus being the physical service, if you like, because when we went to a Gurdwara, there were people who were, well, we didn't see them cooking, but normally there's people cooking, there's people serving, and so it's service that you can actually see. And the gentleman that we saw, and why can I not remember his name? He's also set up a charity where he feeds the homeless within the Manchester area. So he has kind of a langar van that he takes around and tries to feed people. So this is the physical service that he tries to do. It is the most obvious, but sometimes there are people who can't do that physical service, and so they will give money instead to support the langar and other things that kind of go along with that. And then there's the mental aspect, and the examples that are used here are teaching people how to play musical instruments, teaching them how to read the Guru Granth Sahib, because normally the Guru Granth Sahib is read in the Gurmukhi script, which is very similar to Punjabi, and so there are schools within Gurdwaras where people will learn Punjabi so that they can read the Guru Granth Sahib and different things like that. So Seva is central. And what's really weird is whenever we go to places of worship, like we did in the early part of this year, we give a donation as a university to, but Sikhs and a couple of others refuse. And actually Sikhs in the past have tried to give us stuff because they're so grateful for us coming along. And it's like, well, it's very much a giving faith, and it's very much about serving and helping others in all aspects. And so it is a very nice faith when you see it in action. Okay, any questions about Seva at all? Because it is an important thing that you will see around. Okay, and you experienced the langar. It highlights the message of inclusion, service, and friendship in direct opposition to concepts of caste and untouchability in the prevailing Hindu culture in India. So Mary mentioned before that he established the almost the perfect community, and I've forgotten its name. Was it Kartarpur or I can't remember.
It's Kartarpur.
So he established the community there, and that's where everybody was equal. Now, we recognize today, and we'll talk about it in a moment, that equality is just a central fundamental human right. Within the society within which Nanak found himself, it wasn't. And so we have to recognize that the message of equality that we find within the eating of the meal, within the serving of the meal, within every aspect of the meal, was a radical separation from the society at the time. But it's also an example of an act of selfless service that people, that enables I can't read that last bit, enables a person to fulfill more of the purpose of life. Because if you think the concept of God is who is kind of self-existing and needs nothing else, so why has he created the world? Why has he done all of the things? It's not for any self-aggrandizement or any self-fulfillment. It's because he can, and so it's an expression of service. And so therefore, when a Sikh is expressing that service, they are becoming again more like God and becoming more Gurmukh is the phrase that's used. I forgot to mention as well, I think, the opposite of Gurmukh, which is kind of union with God, is Manmukh, which is focused on man and focused on the physical aspects of life, and that draws a person away from God as well. Okay, anything at this point?
You said that the physical aspect is like the most like central one, well, like the one that you can see. Would they focus on that more than their own mental aspect of it, or would they all be equal to a Sikh?
I think they'll probably all be equal. I think the problem is the physical is the one that's most obvious. And so to an outward observer, that's potentially the one that we see most. Whereas the others you may not see and recognize so much to be service. Now, there will be some Sikhs as well who perhaps find it hard within terms of time and everything else. And so to kind of assuage their guilt, they'll just do the kind of material service, which is giving financially. That's not a problem, but it is a problem when it is given for the wrong reason because you can't be bothered doing the physical service. So I think all of them will be given equally, sorry to answer your question, but I just notice, and perhaps the outside society notices more the physical service than the others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
James, can I ask a question, please?
No.
Oh, so you know when, like we're obviously talking about meditation on God and selfless service.
Yes.
When a Sikh dies and their family say a psalm that kind of gives them the assurance that their loved one is going to be reunited with God because they've meditated hard on God, are they not under false pretenses with that assurance? Because while it may be to them that their family member has meditated hard on God, how can you be certain that you've done enough in your earthly life in order to be united with God?
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does, and I don't think you can be. I think it's just the same as with any other kind of funeral rite, whatever religion. So if I go to a Christian funeral, you will hear about how wonderful the person's been and how they're going to be with God. It's very rare that you hear, in fact, I've never heard, he's a bit of a scowly, so he's just going to be burning, isn't he? So people always speak positively as though that happened. And so they're wanting the best. It's an expression of their hope. It's an expression of their knowledge of them, hopefully. But at the same time, they cannot say for certain that they will definitely have attained union with God. They're just expressing a hope, I think, just as the same within a lot of other religions. Does that answer your question, Scarlett?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. So these are just some other things that we'll mention. So the three pillars. So there's contemplating God's name, Nam Japo or Nam Simran, to work diligently and earn an honest living. And so a Sikh will have a specific approach to life, and it will affect the jobs that they choose to do. That doesn't mean they can't do normal jobs, but it will just be an honest job. So I have a friend called Bobby Singh, and he is a computer specialist. So he's still earning an honest living, but he's not cheating anybody, he's not lying, he's not going through all of those things. And then sharing with others, which is Vanda Chako as well. So developing the 5 virtues, truth or wisdom, contentment, compassion, humility, and love. And then the 5 thieves, these are the things that will make a person manmuk and draw them away from union with God, are lust, anger, greed, attachment, and pride. So those are the things that people try to avoid in their lives and be very aware of throughout their lives. I don't know if it's just the people that I've come into contact with, but most, if not all, of the Sikhs that I know are probably the most chilled people I've come across, who have no anger and are just very nice to get along with, and are very selfless in the things that they give. So it does find expression within their lives as well. Now, I think you'll have noticed up to this point, I haven't started where the majority of Sikh schemes of work start. And that's not to say that this is the right way, because I know when I taught, I would always start with Guru Nanak and kind of exploring his life. But for me, it's important to kind of establish the beliefs that Sikhs have that kind of underpin everything that go along with that as well, before we look at Guru Nanak, who is almost the embodiment of these teachings and of these beliefs as well. So it's interesting as we move through. Okay, we're going to look at the 10 Gurus. So I'd like to watch this just brief, well, I think it's 15 minutes, the life of Guru Nanak.
Oh, Nanak, I wish I could come with you. This is one journey we all must make alone, Mardana. At least I'll be here to bury your body.
Hey, my father was born a Hindu. We cremate the body.
Look, tonight you Muslims lay flowers on my left side, Hindus on the right. Whichever flowers remain fresh in the morning, they will tell you what is to be done. He died in that inky blackness just before dawn, when the air is like nectar. He was born at that hour as well. I grew up in the same village as Nanak, so I often heard tell how the stars sang at his birth. Maybe that was why Nanak loved to sing. I could always see God's light in his eyes. And so could his sister, Nanaki. But not everyone could see it.
Do you want to be late on your first day?
Can't I go to school, Papa?
You're a girl.
Hi.
So can I go?
You're a Muslim, Mardana. This is a school for Hindu boys. Nanak! Stop! They are untouchables!
I only want to learn about God.
Nanak!
Let Nanak teach us.
On the paper of faith, with the pen of your heart, write the thoughts God inspires you to think. Oh. You write what I tell you to write. Out!
Nanak! Doing nothing again.
I'm trying to understand God.
We are Hindus. Many gods show us the way.
No, only one. He, though God, is not male or female.
Empty words. Now I have a word for you. Work!
Papa!
Shh! You can look after my cows.
Nanak loved his work, even when he grew up. It allowed him to think about God, which he never stopped doing, just as he never stopped driving his father crazy.
Nanak!
Father, I was thinking, all the things we do wrong, God forgives us.
He'd better, because I won't. You have let my cows ruin a poor man's crop. How will I feed my children or pay my rent, sir? You lazy, worthless boy! It's a miracle.
Kalu, Nanak has been touched by God.
Ha!
Why has God done my work? Because he wants me to do his? Nanak? Heaven is calling me.
What kind of God would ask you to leave your wife, your two babies?
A God who says we should not put our own needs at the center of our lives.
How do you know what God says?
I look into my heart, Sulakshmi.
Don't go. With you, I feel like I'm queen of the whole world.
I will think of you every day. Every day you shall be queen.
I went with him. Well, how could he make his hymns without me to make the music? We went first to his sister Nanaki in Sultanpur. Her husband found Nanak a job as a storekeeper, but he gave away food to the poor.
Oh, no.
Thank you.
With God's help.
This must be what God chose you for.
Is it?
Nanak thought about God all the time. In the morning, in the inky blackness just before dawn, he would go to the river to pray. Nanak, where are you?
It is time for you to begin the work for which you were born. Go, Nanak. Spread love. Glorify my name. Destroy hypocrisy.
Nanaki, it's been 3 days.
He can't be dead.
Be merciful as I am merciful. My name is God, and you are my divine Guru. God is neither Hindu nor Muslim. So whose path shall I follow? I shall follow God's path.
So Nanak followed God's path, from India to Arabia to Persia.
Truth above all. Above truth, truthful conduct. If you do something, do it well. Do not cheat. Do not lie.
When I heard there was a holy man in town, I had my servants prepare a feast.
Will you share my bread? Did you earn your bread by honest work?
Yes. Eat my food, Guru.
Your bread is earned by the blood of those who do your work for you. He who eats what he earns by hard work and gives with his own hand, he alone knows the true way of life. You know you can't take your money with you, but you can take your good deeds. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, house the poor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Go on.
Thank you.
She's an untouchable. Now you will have to purify yourself.
Because I touched her? God made her, and God's spark is in her.
We weren't the only people traveling from nation to nation in those days. The armies of the powerful Emperor Babar were advancing through India, bringing fear and panic wherever they went. Even Nanak was taken prisoner.
This king is a butcher. Cruelty is his knife, Mercy has fled into the night. A lion falling upon helpless children. All this slaughter, this weeping, does it not move you? You do not fight fair, Emperor. God has seen what you have done here today.
Have mercy on me, man of God.
Then show mercy.
The emperor did. He set free 1,000 prisoners that day.
Mardana, why has God set me free?
So that you can go on spreading his word.
Actions speak louder than words. I have told the world how to live. Now, I must show them.
So Nanak created a village, a place in which everyone's bread brought forth milk, not blood. And he called the place Kartarpur, Creator's town. And when the fields were gold with the first harvest, he brought our families to Kartarpur.
At last.
Where shall we sit?
Here.
Here? I'm their guru's father.
We are all children of the same father. Man or woman, rich or poor, Hindu or Muslim.
What do you think?
This place is like the ocean.
The ocean?
The fish does not understand how great the sea is. But without it, he will die. The people here do not understand how great God is.
But without him, they would die. Wonderful words, Tripta.
Your son's words.
I think I have been a fool. Nanak also said, the things we do wrong, God forgives us. I hope he is right. Of course he is right. He is the Guru. I'm the old fool.
The time came for Nanak and me to grow old. Nanak had been chosen to speak God's words, to teach his truths. Now God chose again. Lana would be God's guru, would speak God's words when Nanak had gone. He died in that inky blackness just before dawn, when the air is like nectar. We laid the flowers just as he had told us to, Muslims on the left, Hindus on the right. When dawn broke, every bloom was as fresh as if it had just been picked. But Nanak was not there. What fools we were! Hadn't Nanak told us long ago, there is no Hindu, no Muslim, only God's path laid out before us, waiting for us to tread it, carrying us home.
Any questions or comments or things that you'd like to raise just from the life of Nanak?
I've got one. Again, it's probably quite stupid.
Not at all, sorry.
So, you said that one of the most offensive things is like if you say Sikhism is a mix of Hinduism and Islam.
Yeah.
Like from that video, I don't know, I got the message that it's kind of a middle path between them both.
Yeah, and I would say so as well. If I just move on to the next slide, this Guru Nanak went through 4, I think, different journeys in his life. So he grew up somewhere in India, I didn't see where. But he went all over the place. He went as far as Istanbul. There are some stories that he went to Rome as well. But essentially, he travelled around both the Hindu and the Muslim world, as well as growing up in kind of that area. And so from an outside perspective, I think it's very easy to see the cultural influences that played in the development of his religious thought and within the development of Sikhism. And if you look at the bottom of this slide, it talks about the Guru Granth Sahib, and within the Guru Granth, there's various writings. There's the writings of some of the gurus, and the reason there's not all of the gurus is because it began to be put together, I think, just after Guru Tegh Bahadur had died. So it took all the writings from the gurus before that, but it also contains writings of Hindus and Muslims as well. So I think there's a fine line to be trod. To say that it's just a mixture of Hinduism and Islam is problematic, but to say that it was influenced and there are elements of Sikhism that are similar to Hinduism and Islam, I think is perfectly legitimate. So I think I probably overstated it when I said it's one of the worst things that you can do, but just to kind of present it as well, Nanak took all of these things together and shoved them together is problematic, especially as his river experience, for example, taught him who God was and kind of is a revelation all by itself. And so, yeah, it does contain elements of both, but to say it's only a mixture and it is nothing new, I think that's where it becomes a bit more problematic, because he kind of took what was already there, the experiences he had, and actually made a completely new religion, because it's not one or the other. And as you say, it almost seems like a middle path, because it rejects completely and utterly the caste, well, in some ways it rejects the caste of Hinduism, it rejects the apparent sexism of Islam, and when we go on to look at the Khalsa, you'll see some of the things that it's not allowed to do to directly contradict. So Hinduism and Islam both played a very important role in the development of Sikhism, but it did develop in its own right. I don't know if I've explained that very well. So come back to me if you like.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions at all?
Early in the video, the Hindu chap mentioned that we worship multiple gods. Does that make it difficult to show the video in the classroom? Because obviously they believe in one God in different forms, don't they?
I think the thing is that I think it wouldn't stop me showing the video, but it maybe would raise a question, and so we can be prepared for that. And I think although we teach the kind of theological monotheism, so this is what people believe, or this is what the religion teaches, actually, if you speak to some Hindus, and probably Hindus far, kind of your day-to-day Hindus in the 16th century, they would have perhaps, they talk about Krishna as God, they talk about others as gods as well. So I don't think it's a particular issue.
Okay, so it's worth just mentioning the debate around the whole thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay. One of the most important things for me of Nanak's life is his view of equality. And I mentioned before that it is radical. Women were able to take the lead in things. People ate together. People, I was going to say touched each other, but that just sounds weird. But there was no idea of untouchability. And so it was a completely new way of viewing life within India. And that's really, really important. And I think sometimes it's been lost. Now, this is one of those areas that I think is important to challenge as well. Because although Sikhism teaches the complete equality of the sexes, there are elements that would suggest otherwise in terms of practice. But speaking to the Sikhs that I know, they would say that that's Punjabi culture that has emphasized that. So, for example, sati, which is the burning of the widow upon her husband's death, that did continue within some elements of Sikhism for a while. And sometimes Sikhs, it's very difficult if you go to Gurdwaras, There are lots, there is a kind of a council that looks after the affairs of the Gurdwara, but a lot of times there are no women on those councils, and it's very hard for women to find a voice. So although the equality is there, it's not as chocolate box as kind of it would appear. So although the message itself is radical, and there's no problem with women being granthis, which are kind of leaders within the Gurdwara, the reality is crossed with human nature as well. So it's kind of exploring those things, I think. There are wonderful examples throughout Sikh history. There's a lady called Mai Bhargo, Maibhago, and she was a military leader almost within Sikhism. So there are examples, but Sikhism, although it has this radical equality, it's still tempered sometimes by human nature and a patriarchal society. So I'm not sure you'd explore that with year 7, but if you teach GCSE or A level, it is an interesting thing to kind of explore. Okay, any questions about any of that for so far? Okay, I'll just assume that. So one of the problems I think I face, and I think we all perhaps are susceptible to, is something in psychology that's called the primacy-recency effect. Has anyone come across the primacy-recency effect?
Nope.
Is it like the newest stuff is like the best?
Yeah, that's half of it. That's the recency stuff. The primacy is the first. So it's a mixture of both. So the things that came at the beginning and the things that come at the end are the most important, or the things that we remember most. That's how it's used within psychology. So if I gave you a list of, I don't know, 10 things, you would remember the first because you're really trying, but then everything in the middle kind of gets lost, and then you remember the things that come at the end because they're the ones you heard most recently. And I think sometimes we suffer with that when we teach about Sikhism and we teach about the 10 gurus, because the 2 gurus that you will know most about, and the two gurus I know most about, are Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh or Guru Gobind Rai. Or am I doing you a disservice? Do we talk about any of the others, for example, Guru Har Gobind or Guru Arjan or Guru Ramdas?
Don't think I've heard of any of the others apart from them 2, to be honest.
Okay. So that is the way we teach, I think. And all of the others did amazing things, and there are stories of each of those gurus as well. I can't remember which one it is, so apologies. But there's one of those who was taken prisoner and was told that he was being set free, and as many Hindus, or as many other prisoners, and they were all Hindus, that he could take with him were able to. So he kind of, there were lots and lots of different strands on his cloak, and each one of those 100 prisoners took one of the strands, and he was able to walk out of the prison with each of them as well. There's another one, and I can't remember, I think it may be Guru Tegh Bahadur, and what he said is that essentially there was a Muslim emperor, and he suggested that you had to convert or you would die. And so the Hindu teachers, I think you may have heard this story actually, but essentially he went to the emperor and said, look, if you can convert me, then all of these people will convert. But if you don't, then you have to allow people freedom of religion and different things, and that's why he was martyred, because he could not be converted. So there's lots of wonderful stories about each one of these in turn, and we kind of skip over them. So for example, we can see on this list that Guru Ramdas founded the city of Amritsar, where you would see the Golden Temple, which Guru Arjan built, and he began to put together the Adi Granth, which was the precursor to the Guru Granth Sahib. So that there's different things that each one of them did that kind of highlighted importance, but we tend to just focus on Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh or Guru Gobind Rai. The reason I'm saying Guru Gobind Rai and Singh is before he changed his name, he was Guru Gobind Rai, and then at the time of the Vaisakhi, he changed his name to Guru Gobind Singh. So it's important that we kind of, when we're using stories, we can explore some of the other gurus and what they did, and we're going to explore one of them in a moment as well. But again, it depends on time really as well, doesn't it? But we shouldn't just default to Gobind Singh and Nanak. Okay, I'm not going to show you this video because you've watched enough video today. Who can tell me the story of the founding of the Khalsa or Vaisakhi?
Is it, well, yeah. Do you want me to do, shall I do the summary?
You can do a summary. That would be wonderful, Adam. Thank you.
Can I ask a question first?
You can.
Is there any like commentary on why there's never been like a female guru? Is that something that's ever acknowledged within like the faith?
I have not come across it.
So that it's just, they just kind of don't talk about it type of thing.
Or it's the fact that I've never read it. So it's not. I think I did read something once that suggested it would just have been too revolutionary, and she would not have been accepted
as a leader. Yeah.
As a leader. I'm just googling it at the moment. So no, not that I'm aware of, but I don't actually know. So it's something to look at. But I did read something sometime, but that might have just been someone making it up to make it seem more palatable.
Yeah. Okay. Shall I do the Khalsa now?
Please, if you would.
So there's a big gathering of Sikhs in a place that I don't remember, but it was a Hindu country, obviously. So there's all these Sikhs gathered, and there's like, is it an emperor that's giving a speech? Or...
No, it's the guru.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he's giving a speech, the final one, Guru Gobind Singh, and he says, if you love God, you've got to die for God. So I want you to prove your faith and step forward if you don't mind me killing you, so you can prove your faith. I'm sure he said it nicer than that. So then crowd goes silent, no one says a word, everyone's a bit stunned, but eventually one man does stand up and he goes forward, and the guru takes him into a tent, and the crowd, they hear this big like swoosh of a sword, and they're like, oh my goodness, what's just happened? And the guru walks out of the tent, sword dripping red. So the crowd are all a bit like, what on earth is going on? But then the guru says, right, another one now. If you love your God, you've got to be prepared to die for him. So after some time, another man steps forward, same thing, goes into the tent, crowd hears swoosh, guru comes out, sword dripping red. And that happens a total of 5 times. Is this the right story before I go on?
It is. Yeah.
I had a horrible vision there. It was the wrong one. So that happens 5 times. So 5 people go into the tent. No one comes out apart from the guru. After the 5th, the guru brings them out of the tent, and they're all alive. So the crowd is obviously smaller because some members of the crowd had like ran away horrified. Some were like, this is awful, we're going to go, I'm not going to watch this. But the remaining members of the crowd see the 5 men walk out of the tent again. They're alive, they're fine, but they're wearing matching dress. They're in like saffron, usually it's saffron clothes, it's like a uniform. And the guru says, these 5 men who were prepared to die for God, they are the first members of the new army for God, what I'm making. And then the guru proceeds to do a ceremony to initiate them in. Then the guru does the ceremony, then the guru's wife does the ceremony, and then the crowd join in, and then that's the Khalsa.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Does anyone want to add anything to that story at all? So ably told by Adam.
If there's anything to add.
Okay.
Perfect.
Fab. So this is the founding of the Khalsa. So the Khalsa, the Sikhs were under threat, and people were having to fight for their faith and do all kinds of things. And so this was a recommitment, and the 5 people are called the Panch Pyares, or the 5 pure ones or the 5 beloved ones. And the rules of the Khalsa are these. And so, as mentioned at different points, you go through the ceremony, which is a mixture of Amrit, and then the mixture is drunk and sprinkled on the eyes and the hair. And during the ceremony, people recite the Milmantar and agree to the rules of the Khalsa. Now, again, it's something that you will hear phrased as Sikh baptism, even by Sikhs themselves, but it's although it's analogous, it's kind of different as well. And so I would avoid the phrase of Sikh baptism. So if you look at these as the rules of the Khalsa, you can see how some of them are an outright rejection of Hinduism and Islam. So, for example, the first one, the Sikh will worship only God. They will not set up any idols, gods, goddesses, or statues for worship, nor shall they worship any human being. That is to draw a very clear distinction between who a Sikh is and who a Hindu is. So it established the Guru Granth Sahib as the living Guru, so that after Guru Gobind Singh and his death, there would be no other human gurus, but that the Guru Granth Sahib would be the living Guru. Now, just so you're aware, and I'm sure you are, Sahib is just an honorific, if you like. The holy book is Guru Granth, and Sahib is just kind of the honorific that goes at the end. The caste will remain distinct by wearing the 5 Ks. Males become Singh, and ladies become Kaurs or princess. Drugs, smoking, and alcohol. No piercings. No wearing of a veil. So both of those, or the first one, the piercings, is distinctly rejection of Hindu practice at the time, and then not wearing of the veil is a distinct rejection of Muslim practice. Okay, honest labour, giving, never stealing or gambling. A Khalsa's dress should be simple, and when a Khalsa meets another Khalsa, he will greet him by saying, the Khalsa belongs to God, victory belongs to God. I forgot, there is also another one, and for some reason it's not on that screen, is that a Sikh will not eat any meat that has been offered to a god. So Sikhs are, although a large number of Sikhs are vegetarian, all Sikhs will not eat kosher or halal, because that is seen to have been offered to another god, because a prayer has been said over the killing. So I had a student once, she was in the 6th form. She came in kicking up a stink because her local subway in Rusholme had become halal, and so therefore she couldn't get a turkey butty or whatever else that she wanted from Subway, and so she was very disgusted with that. So those are the rules of the Khalsa. Also not on there, and I don't know why it's not on there, is about the cutting of hair. Oh, it is there. They must never remove hair from any part of their bodies, and that's for men and for women. So any questions about any of those rules or their implementation?
Yeah. So, you know, if you don't do this initiation,
yeah,
does that mean that you can smoke or you could drink, or should most Sikhs still follow like these rules even if they don't go through the initiation?
Okay, there are Khalsa Sikhs and there are non-Khalsa Sikhs. So the non-Khalsa Sikhs are the people who have not gone through that ceremony. And there are different types even within non-Khalsa Sikhs. I promise I'm answering your question, Cara. Some of them, as I think Scarlett mentioned before, are kind of cultural, secular kind of Sikhs. So in which case, none of those are a problem, and they would be able to break those, if break's the right word, because they've not taken upon themselves those responsibilities. Yeah. However, there are others, and the guy we met, for a number of years, I thought he was a Khalsa Sikh, but he's a non-Khalsa Sikh because he's not been through that ceremony, but he would live each of those rules because he hopes to, at some point, go through the Amrit ceremony. So he sees it as the culmination of a process rather than the beginning of a process. Okay. But there are Sikhs that you will see who And it's very, not very strange, but you will see Sikhs with short hair, you will see Sikhs who are smoking, and you'll think, hang about, you're not Sikh then if you're doing those things. But it's that they're not a Khalsa Sikh. And so therefore they choose not to do some of those things. But then again, you will also meet some Khalsa Sikhs who don't do some of those things either, who choose to ignore some of those rules. So although they wanted to keep them at some point, they don't always. These are ways to avoid, well, to identify yourself, yes, as a Sikh, but also to enable someone to become more Gurmukh. And so if people choose to live these rules, then they will become more Gurmukh. And it's not just Khalsa Sikhs that can achieve union with God. Anyone can, but only humans. And so this is your one chance almost for another 4.2 million lifetimes or whatever else that is to achieve these kind of things. So that was a very long answer to say, no, they don't, but yes, they do at the same time. So there will be some that don't and some that do. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Any other questions about living the laws of the Khalsa?
Can I ask a question, please?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you know how you can sometimes have people who convert to a faith?
Yeah.
So if someone, for example, converts to Sikhism, but they've already had like a piercing prior, if they take their piercing out, does that then allow them to meet and like sort of tick that box, or because they've got that hole, or they've had that hole, how you want to phrase that, does that sort of limit their ability to be a full Khalsa or to be fully initiated? Same with like hair dye, if I don't know, like outgrowth, that sort of stuff.
No, and for example, I have a piercing in my ear that I had 30 years ago now, and you wouldn't be able to tell. It's not there anymore. It's healed up. So it's not a problem. So you can convert to Sikhism. You go through the Amrit ceremony, and therefore you become a Sikh. So I think you would need to stop wearing those piercings, but it wouldn't preclude you from becoming a Khalsa Sikh. And over time that would develop. There was another one that you asked, and I can't remember what it was.
It was just sort of along the same lines with like hair dye or having your hair, like cutting your hair previously or having a hair removal prior to that.
Yeah, and there's different levels of observance within the Khalsa. So I have another friend called Ranveer who has a skin condition, which means he can grow a beard for 2 months, but then the irritation becomes so much that he has to shave it off. Now, there are some Sikhs who would say, no, you should never shave it off. But he is a very observant Khalsa Sikh, but he would say, no, for my health, I have to shave my beard off. And then I'll grow it for 2 months, and then I'll shave it off again and go through that process. So there's different levels of observance, and some people will take this to the nth degree, others won't. And so there's different levels of religiosity. But having cut your hair beforehand is not a problem. You would just be expected to continue to grow it from that point forward. Is that okay, Scarlett?
Yeah, no, that's fab. Thank you.
Okay. The other thing as well is if we look at Singh and Kaur, although they are only added to the names of Khalsa Sikhs, for many Sikhs they have become just surnames. So there will be a family name, but then there will also be Singh. So you will meet Sikhs with the name Singh and Kaur who are not Khalsa Sikhs because they've just become, that's just a part of their name. And so you can't always tell someone is a Khalsa Sikh because they are called Singh, or someone is a Khalsa Sikh because they're called Kaur. It's just not that obvious, I'm afraid. So this is an example of an activity you could do. It's probably the only time I'm talking about an activity today, so I apologize for that. So this is quite a nice thing that we can do with any kind of religious celebration or service. So this is the Amrit ceremony. Now there is a problem with, I think, the image in the middle, You'll notice that there are 5 of them to represent the Panchpyare, or the beloved ones, or the pure ones that took place at Vaisakhi. But you'll also notice that they're all men. And officially, they do not have to be men. And so is this illustration kind of reinforcing the stereotypes that we have, or is it just reflective of actually the situations that people go through as well, and we find in most Gurdwaras throughout the land? So it's interesting. But if you can see, the speech bubbles remind us, or ask people to consider, the feelings of people going through the ceremony. And then there are a couple of things. So what's happening in the picture, the story the Sikhs remember here is, and will taking Amrit make a difference to a person's behavior? And then in what ways is Amrit like other rituals you know about? So the way this is laid out enables challenge to be had, because it remembers the story, so it links stories to practices, and then it also links practices to an effect on people's lives. And so we can see progression, and we can see different levels of challenge within this. What I'll do is I'll also put the Word version of this, so it's editable on, because I think I just took a photo of this, a screenshot of this. But you could do something similar to this with regards to baptism, or with regards to other types of things. So any questions about? Okay, you can't talk about Sikhism. Apparently, it's a rule without talking about the 5 Ks. But what's interesting is I think this is almost the last thing we're going to talk about, because in some ways all of the other things are far more important, and these are just expressions of those beliefs. So I'll quickly go through these. Okay, so I think you're all aware that turbans are not one of the 5 Ks, but they are there to keep the hair tidy and everything else. Does anyone know why there are different shaped turbans? So if you do a quick Google search of turbans, there are different types, some that are tall, some that are flat like this.
This is probably completely wrong because I'm referencing like Hinduism here, but is it to do with like maybe different stages of life, or different, like if you're different levels kind of thing?
That sounds like a really good idea, and it's a better explanation than the one I'm going to give in a minute. So unfortunately not, no. Sorry.
Is it a cultural difference?
Yeah, it's just fashion and where you come from and everything else. It's just, there's no right way to tie a turban, essentially, is the answer. You can wear it however you like, and colours and designs can be anything that you like. So yeah, sorry, yours was a much better answer, Shoned, but essentially it's just fashion.
Okay.
So the reason this is the hair is God-given and sacred, and therefore never cut it. So it's a reflection of their desire to be united with God, because God has given them that hair, and it's an expression of their reliance on him or her or it. Okay, kangas are combs that are used to keep a Sikh's long hair tidy. These will often be put in underneath a turban. They're showing respect to God by looking after their hair. Again, it's only symbolic. Okay, so the kara is the metal wristband, or the bangle. It reminds Sikhs of the teachings of the Gurus and discourages them from breaking the laws of the Gurus. So Sikhs have had to fight for their faith in the past, and this would originally have been the length of the forearm, because it's in the right hand, which is their sword arm, and so it would have protected them. And so it reminds them of their responsibility to fight for their faith and to fight to protect others. But it also reminds them of God, because it is a single eternal nature of things. The kashera are loose shorts that are worn under a Sikh's clothes. And again, this is to do with modesty, and so the need to dress modestly, but also the idea that it reminds them of a time where they would need freedom when they were riding on horses. And so again, the desire to fight to protect the rights of those who are threatened. So again, it's one of those. and again with the kirpan or the sword, because it reminds Sikhs that they should fight for those who are less fortunate. So yes, it's a kind of a uniform, but these symbols are symbols of identity that remind them of their history and also their relationship to God. So trying to teach about these 5 things without having taught about the others, kind of the background to Sikh history, the Sikh beliefs, then they kind of lose their importance. And so we should always teach all of the other things alongside the 5Ks. The 5Ks are interesting, but I think possibly the least important of all the things that we've talked about today. Others would disagree. So we've mentioned this before, that there are non-Khalsa Sikhs. There is a phrase that is used that I tend not to use, which is Sahajdari Sikhs, which are slow adopters, which sounds almost offensive in phrase. But it is a word that's used within Sikhism, but non-Khalsa Sikhs. So this gentleman wears a turban, and so you imagine he has long hair, but he also has a short beard. So it kind of indicates that there are different things. Now, throughout the world, just so you're aware, there are different seats of authority. So there are 5. So a tact is like a judgment seat almost. And so there are 5 seats that issue guidance and are recognized to have authority within Sikhism. So there's the Akal Takht, the Takht Sri Kashgar, and all of the others. The most important of these is the Akal Takht. This is the supreme seat of authority. So when the Akal Takht issues a ruling, the majority of the world Sikhs will accept that and kind of follow it. And so the Akal Takht are the ones who released the Rahit Maryada and kind of said these are the ways that you should live things. One of the most recent things that they've said a few years ago is that homosexual marriages are forbidden. Now, speaking to some Sikh friends, they disagree. They say, well, actually, I think more important than what the Akal Takht are saying is the message of the gurus of complete and utter equality. And so therefore, I will ignore the Akal Takht. We can't perform same-sex marriages within the Gurdwara, but I think they're okay. So although there are seats of authority, individual Sikhs and individual Gurdwaras can, if they so choose, ignore and teach differently. Though you won't, I don't think, find any Gurdwaras that do same-sex marriages. But the Akal Takht is something that you will come across. The others less so, because they are all subservient and below the Akal Takht. The Akal Takht, does anyone know where that's based? Take a wild guess. Nope. Okay, it's just based in Amritsar, in the site of the Golden Temple as well. So that's there. Okay. Guru Granth Sahib, again, you will probably know, we've talked a lot about this already, but it was collected together, or it began to be collected as the Adi Granth, and then it was given supreme authority by Guru Gobind Singh. And you can see how it's laid out on its stand, and there's a chari used and different things that are there. So that's on its left. It's the focus for worship, and people, Sikhs, will bow down. And as you remember, when we went to the Gurdwara, the Sikh gentleman, I still can't remember his name, which is shocking, but bowed down beneath as a sign of respect, and then circumambulated it as well. So it is afforded, and I think he also showed you the bedroom, because it is treated as a living being. Okay, it is a living guru. Marriages have to be performed in front of it. Any place where the Guru Granth Sahib is a place of very special I can't think of the word. It's just treated very specially. So if you have a Guru Granth Sahib in the home, there are certain rules that have to be followed for having it. So most Sikhs will not have a copy of the complete Guru Granth Sahib in the home, though it is available online and extracts of it are available as well in individual books. Probably the website I use most when I'm looking at the Guru Granth Sahib and finding quotes and reading it is one called searchgurbani.org, which is search, GURBANI.org, and that has all the Guru Granth Sahib in it, and it's separated into angs, which are essentially pages or sections, if you like, but they're hymns, and it is supposed to be sung. Okay, and sometimes you will also, it's used in the sense that you have something called the Akhand Path, where it is read continually over 2 days. Okay, I've just waffled on quite a lot about the Guru Granth Sahib. So the way Sikhs worship is something called kirtan, which is the singing of hymns. And so there will be a group of musicians at the front to the side of the Guru Granth Sahib, and someone will sing, because they are hymns, the Guru Granth Sahib sat at the front, but there will be music that accompanies it. Now, traditionally, you will see lots of men, and I've chosen this picture specifically because it does not have to be men that sing or read from the Guru Granth Sahib. It tends to be, but it doesn't have to be. So I found a picture of a lady who was playing kirtan. So music is incredibly important within Sikhism, and that's the way that communal worship takes place. And if you Google kirtan or go on YouTube, you can see examples of kirtan taking place. Okay, I'm nearly done, I promise. One of the other ideas is Miri Piri. So you will be familiar with the kanda, which is that symbol that you see on the right hand side. So the two swords either side, the two kirpans, are symbolic of something called Miri Piri. So Guru Har Gobind, when he was installed as Guru, asked to be given two swords. One, and let's just read the quote at the top. It's through thine intercession I obtained birth, and it is in fulfillment of thy blessing I wear two swords as emblems of my spiritual and temporal authority. In the Guru's house, religion and worldly enjoyment shall be combined, the cauldron to supply the poor and needy, and the scimitar to smite oppressors. So the two swords are symbolic of Miri Piri, the ideal of the saint soldier. So that being, that person who is spiritual and striving to be Gurmukh, but also the person who is trying to defend the rights of others. And so the two go hand in hand. It's been described as a bit like yin and yang within some Chinese traditional religions. So it's the idea that Miri Piri goes together, and this is an ideal. And so saint soldier is often what it's called. Jai Dev Singh said the two swords represented Miri and Piri respectively. He wore two swords, one on each side, completely separate from each other, meeting briefly at one intersection only, thus symbolizing that two powers were separate altogether and yet so close that they have to live in life together. Thus Guru Har Gobind Ji, which is just an honorific, separated Miri and Piri, recognizing both as the essential integral part of life. So a Sikh is supposed to fight for the rights of others, but they've also got to have the spiritual side to themselves as well. So this ideal of Miri Piri is alongside the ideal of being Gurmukh. Okay, I'll skip that. Okay, that's us with Sikhism. So any questions after that hour and 45-minute whistle-stop tour of Sikhism?
Are there any important like festivals that are significant?
Yes, sorry. The most important one is Vaisakhi. So it was a harvest festival when Guru Gobind Singh called everybody together, but it's now a remembrance of the founding of the Khalsa. So Vaisakhi is one of them. It's sometimes spelled with a B as well. There's often processions through the streets. Another one is Diwali, but it's celebrated for a different reason for Hindus. So this is to do, I think, trying to think, it's to do with one of the gurus. It may even be the martyrdom of one of the gurus. I can't quite remember, but Diwali is a Sikh festival. And then there are other individual ones called Gurpurbs, Gurpurbs, and they are all celebrations of the gurus. So the birthday of Guru Nanak, for example, or the birthday of Guru Gobind Singh. So there's Vaisakhi is the main one, but there are Diwali, which is another one, and then there's Gurpurbs, which are kind of gurus' birthdays and things. So those are there.
Fab, thank you.
Okay, no worries. Adam, you're going to ask a question?
No, I don't. Am I muted? No, I don't think I do. It was about I struggle to wrap my head around Sikhism a lot, I think, because the idea of equality is so important, but then it's kind of like mired with like the whole like societal norms and like how women tend not to. So I find that pretty difficult, but I suppose there are things that a class have noticed too, and you just have to kind of address it as like religion anywhere is like a mix of culture and the actual teachings.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I went to a lecture last year when I was the only non-Sikh in the room, which was slightly interesting. And basically, they were blaming Punjabi culture for any sexism within the Sikh community. So it's Punjabi rather than Sikh. And actually, the problem is that, yes, you can do that, but actually, when does the cultural become the religious? And this is the same within any religion, isn't it? So when we look at the subjugation of women within Islam, is that cultural or is that religious? Now, I can quote lots of texts that tell you it's cultural because the religion is completely equal. But eventually, if you're an adherent of that religion, you see the two as synonymous. And so I think it is important that we do raise questions as to the interplay between religion and culture. So even within my own faith, the majority of Mormons in the US are Republican, which I really struggle with because that's kind of antithetical to my faith, whereas they say, no, that's because of my faith. And like, well, let's have an argument about that and develop it. But it's a cultural thing that has arisen. And so being able to have that discussion, so why, for example, are women treated differently? Well, is that because of culture? Why is homosexual marriage not allowed within, or same-sex marriage not allowed within Sikhism when Guru Nanak taught this radical equality? Is it just because of the prejudices of the people who run the Akal Takht? And being able to explore those issues. And I think if we do it in a respectful way, then the discussion of the interplay between religion and culture is important within every religion because culture is seen to change and there's a dynamic interplay between the two of them. It's just problematic, I guess.
Yeah, I think it is present within every religion, but I think because Sikhism, like the first line is like equality and that radical equality for the time that it was made, I think it kind of stands out more as something that seems like as society's progressed, maybe that should still be a step ahead. When
is it because it's newer, I guess? Because if you look at Jesus's teachings, his was a radical equality and a radical overturning of society, but now it's not. Now it's just kind of used to oppress. And Margaret Thatcher used, for example, the Good Samaritan as a political tool. She said, well, the Good Samaritan could only help because he had money. Therefore, we take care of ourselves and the capitalist society first, and then we can help others. So it's all a bit of a misinterpretation, I think, or a different interpretation. of the way things perhaps would have been originally. It's an interesting discussion nonetheless.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions at this point?
I've got one. With how the Sikhs aren't allowed to cut their hair or like remove any body hair.
Yes.
Doctors and stuff currently are like being requested to. So, what's the kind of faith basis for that? So, should a Sikh doctor refuse to because of like their faith, or should they because it's helping other people?
Right. So there has been a discussion, as you say, about this, and there have been highlighted, I think, on social media, a couple of Sikh doctors who have cut their hair, who have cut their beards, so that they can wear the face masks properly. So therefore, they have seen, as you've said, their responsibility to help and serve others to supersede that of keeping their hair long. So there is that. Whereas what was interesting, the guy we met said that he would never have. So he went into hospital to have an operation, and he refused to have his hair cut on his chest. Now, is that because that was only to save himself, and so therefore would he have done it if it was to save somebody else? So I think there will be different answers to that within the Sikh community, but the ones that have received most kind of airtime are those who have actually shaved them, because, as you've said, they've seen the command to serve others to be more important than the ideal of not shaving. Is that okay, Liz?
Yeah, fab. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Anything else about Sikhism? Okay, well, that's us, ladies and gentlemen.